Come on. All right, now we're live on Facebook. I always get a little jittery when like, yeah, I'm supposed to be live on three things and one says, we're not ready yet. Now it is. So I'm ready. I'm Brent Leary. Second day in a row, a few good minutes with for a really interesting conversation. And this one today, this is cool stuff because I like talking about MarTech. I'm learning more about AdTech. There are differences, folks. And so we're going to get a chance to talk about both and where they're going and how they fit into some of these newfangled things like Web 3.0. And so with me today is Tara DaZao. Tara is from Pega. She heads up some of their MarTech and AdTech uh, products and thought leadership. And so, Tara, thank you for joining me today. This is great.
Thanks for having me, Brent. Glad to be here.
So I hear that you kind of like things like AdTech and MarTech. Is that true?
Yes, I'm a total geek about AdTech and MarTech. I think it's so interesting, and I love getting on calls and things like this with people who are similarly nerdy about marketing.
Wait a minute. Hey, what are you trying to say here?
I mean, look, we both have glasses.
Oh, okay. Well, you got that. So, all right. So we'll be geeking and nerding out for the next 30, 45 minutes or so.
Yes.
So before we jump into all that, why don't you give us a little of your personal background?
Sure, yeah. So I've been with Pega a little over a year and a half, and I spend a lot of my days talking about AdTech and MarTech and what's going to be happening and how our products can help brands. And then prior to that, I was with Oracle for about 7 years, same topics, different company, and it's just been a really interesting ride based on how the industry has changed over the last 10 years. It's just so innovative and volatile, and you never know what's coming. So keeps me on my toes.
Absolutely. So I talked a little bit about you guys did put out a research project around, kind of some of the findings for what is coming ahead for MarTech and AdTech. But before we jump into all that kind of stuff, would it be okay if you just give me like a high level definition of what each of those things is? And because I think sometimes people say one and they may mean the other, and they kind of equate the ad tech for martech and vice versa. But what are the differences? What are the things that we should know or people should know when it comes to ad tech and when it comes to martech, how they compare and how they contrast?
Yeah, I kind of lump them into what I call mad tech, because what we're seeing now is brands that have giant stacks, and your ad tech tools and your martech tools are all sort of smashed into one place. Really, ad tech is, how do we get our messaging out in front of uh, audiences in different areas through advertising. MarTech is more of, hey, this is an integrated play. We're going to do our email. We're going to do our inbound and outbound all in one place. So it's really, AdTech kind of nests within MarTech now. And I think it's going to become even more like that as we march into the future, as third-party cookie deprecation happens.
Yeah, I always got to talk about that. Matter of fact, I heard this term is new to me, super cookies. Have you heard of this? Do you know what a super cookie is?
A super cookie? No, this is the first time I'm hearing of it. I probably should know what it is, but
Don't worry about it. It sounds good, but it probably isn't as good as it sounds. I just literally heard about it. I just thought I'd ask you in passing. Maybe it's something that we'll be hearing more and more about in the future. But for the time being, why don't we talk about some of the things that you? Well, let me ask you this before we jump into the report. Um, how is social media? How does that change the landscape and maybe the relationship between Martech and AdTech?
it's interesting because social media, when it's organic, it's part of just a brand marketing strategy, right? But where paid media comes into play, paid social, that's where ad tech kind of steps in, right? Because you can connect your social channels to other data sources and use it to advertise. So essentially, it's got two functions, and those functions aren't going anywhere. it's still going to remain a touch point that's really important. And I think brands are trying to find ways to utilize it in the new world without the cookie. So we'll see a lot of partnerships. We'll see a lot of different ways that brands are going to try to use social now in the future without that functionality.
Awesome. Okay, so I've been kind of talking about this recent research study that you guys released. So maybe you could give us a high level overview of the 7 trends changing the status quo when it comes to marketing, and why you guys did this report, and kind of who are the folks who were surveyed.
Yeah, this report went across 11 different countries, and it was marketing leaders in all verticals. And really, what we're trying to find out is how brands feel right now about what's happening in the industry and how they think that they're going to be able to sustain their business in a healthy way moving forward. And I think what we saw coming out of this is a validation of some of the hunches that we had. And, in marketing, it's now all about data and data science. We don't do hunches anymore, which is a good thing. But I think what we're seeing is that, number one, we're going to have to see some major digital transformations here, because these legacy marketing technologies that are all based on campaign frameworks are no longer going to be viable in the future, right? We're going to be looking for more tools that are unified, more tools that are backed by artificial intelligence, and less about data silos, right? We have had a problem in marketing in the past of having data silos and not being able to figure out how to use data to the fullest extent. And I think that artificial intelligence is a way to sort of bridge that gap. Now, I think what's most important to me out of all of these findings, right, is that personalization is still going to be top of mind for marketers. And I'm not talking about what I call your grandpa's personalization. So your grandpa's personalization is when you get an email with your name in the to line, right? That's not personalization. So when I talk about personalization, I'm talking about one-to-one interactions where the customer really feels like the brand is speaking directly to them.
Right.
So they know what your preferences are. They can read your context. When is a good time to be talking to you? They know what not to talk to you about. And I think in the report, we saw something like 67% of those surveyed said that personalization is a top priority for them in the next 5 years.
Are you seeing, or do you feel like we're finally going to get to the point where consumers feel like they're not just being marketed to or blasted? Are we going to get to the point, or companies be able to get to the point where not only do they have the technology, because it feels like there's tons and tons of technology that are at your disposal if you're a marketer today, and you're only going to get more and more of it as your interactions get digital. But what about being able to actually have a conversation, or at least give the appearance that you're not only speaking at customers, but actually listening and engaging in a two-way interaction? Because it really feels like that's the thing that has been missing, regardless of what kind of technology you've used.
Yeah, I think it's actually critical, because the way we look at it here at Pega is you actually have to earn the right to sell consumers something, right? So we call it marketing or engaging with empathy. It's, I always give this example that when a consumer is in a bad place or a weird place, that's a terrible time to talk to them, right? If they're in a region where they're having a natural disaster or there's some other extenuating circumstances, you don't want to sell them something in that moment, right? You want to, if you talk to them at all, and silence is sometimes a treatment, and I think that's undervalued. We don't always need to be talking to them.
Right.
It's really offering value to them, right? So we don't just come at them selling them something. We say, hey, do you need these resources? Where can you get the most out of our product to help you navigate whatever situation that you're in? And I think the brands that get it right are going to take all of the spoils, because customers are tired of being bombarded with irrelevant information from us. They see so many messages every single day that unless we're offering something of value to them, they're just going to tune out. And they have been tuning out. And that's why we're in the situation we're in now, where consumers are totally freaked out about their privacy. They're overexposed to brands, and basically, if you don't get it right, you're going to be out.
Even if it's really good content, if you're forcing it on people who aren't looking for that at that particular time, even good content could be annoying if it's not, delivered at the right time, or you're not focused on what's really the driving force, right now for a customer. So is that part of what you guys kind of, when you talk about, I want to go back to the enhanced personalization. Is that kind of what enhanced personalization means? Not just great content, but relevant content at the right time, delivered in the right channel, all that kind of stuff.
All of that, yeah, and frequency, right? Like, there's nothing more obnoxious than you buying a product and then the brand coming back and emailing you every single day, or trying to sell you with advertising the same product that you just bought, right? We've all been there. We bought that pair of shoes, and then those shoes follow us around for the next 6 months. And I think that it's a huge miss. Anytime I see that, I want to email the brand's marketing team and just say, hey, this is a really bad customer experience. You guys need to fix this. Here's some free consulting for you.
Yeah, it feels like, even, I don't want to keep harping on this, but it feels like as good as the technology gets, some companies rely even more so on the better technology, thinking that that will solve their problem. And all great technology does is move the problem bigger, make it bigger, and move it faster around.
Yeah, and Scott Brinker's landscape of AdTech and MarTech this year came out, and average number of applications in a stack is 18. And then Gartner comes through and says most brands are only utilizing half of their stack. So that's, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars going to waste on these applications. And it's not delivering a better customer experience for sure. And I think that the real core of the issue is that brands are not using what they have effectively. They're not using the data that they have effectively. It's always about more data, more technology. And I think it should be more about better technology, better data.
Yeah, absolutely. And better interactions based off that better data.
Absolutely. I mean, more informed, right? Like, if you call into a customer service line and you're having a horrible experience, now's not the time to try to upsell you on the product that you're having problems with. Now is the time to say, hey, I see you're having a terrible experience with this product we sold you. How about we give you a month free?
Yeah. It feels like there's still a disconnect between, or maybe an overdependence on technology versus common sense, or I mean, just what you're saying. Like, why are you going to offer somebody something when they have a problem that you haven't fixed for them yet?
Absolutely.
It's not rocket science here. I want to go to my buddy Thomas. First of all, I think he was talking about the super cookies sounded scary. Kind of, they sound tasty, but really don't know what that is. We'll figure it out, Thomas. We'll talk about it. We'll ask the happy hour crew about it. But I like this question. What do customers consider being of value?
Yeah, I think it's really anything that helps them in the moment, because right now we're in a digital universe where the customer pivots instantly and then they're done. So, like, if you can't talk to them within minutes, it's over. And it may be as simple as, hey, I see you're looking for this information and you can't find it. Try another channel. Get in touch with our customer service center, or call this number, or I had a really awesome experience actually. So I live in Seattle, Washington, and I was driving down to Portland, and as soon as I got into the Portland area, my bank sent me a notification that said that I could use their app on public transport in Portland. Now that's valuable, right? Especially knowing that I often use public transport. That's something that makes my life easier. They're not selling me anything, and it makes me say, oh man, this is great. I want to keep banking with this bank because they really have what I need.
Right. It works for you, and it's not just about them.
Yes,
Basically.
exactly. It's two-way. It's a two-way conversation. It's not, they're not just taking.
I want to ask about privacy, but not at this point, because that's like the good side of what companies can do with data.
Yeah.
There's a not so good side as well that maybe we could talk about.
There definitely is.
I wanted to bring this up. You talk about the survey found these new landscapes come with new KPIs, and just to explain a little bit of this, the blue is the current state, and 3 to 5 years is the yellow, the future state. And the customer lifetime value. This is really shocking how much more important. I thought it was already important, but apparently
Yeah.
it's going to be extremely important in the not too distant future. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think because budgets have been determined based on channel so much in the past, marketing budgets, that we've kind of come up with these really squishy metrics to sort of prove the value of certain channels. And really, channels should be irrelevant. What's most relevant is how much value a customer brings you over the lifetime of your relationship with them. And I think it's hard to calculate that, and it's hard to track when you have so many different applications. There's probably someone sitting behind the controls that has to take all of that data and manually press it together to figure that out over the long term. So it's a tricky one, because it's not the easiest thing to figure out, but it's probably the most important predictor of sustainable value and growth for a company. So we need to shift away from things like clicks, click-throughs, all of those type of squishy, impressions. Clicking's not buying. I have an 8-year-old, and he's often on my phone clicking away, so that doesn't mean anything about what I'm going to buy or what I have bought.
Well, it feels like, that's a great example. Clicking is an activity, it's an action, it's a kind of interaction, but it's not, or it doesn't necessarily need to be actual engagement.
Yeah.
Things that actually you could, when you think of engagement, it's just not, oh, I clicked on something and then I was out. It's
Right.
more of, oh, this started a meaningful interaction, that, maybe it led to multiple interactions. It led to something. It led to a long-term-ish kind of thing. Are you seeing those kind of metrics will be as important, as people value customer lifetime even more? There seems to be an opportunity to put some engagement metrics around that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because the third-party cookie is kind of the way that brands have been able to connect those experiences and those channels in the past. And I think that's why it's more important than ever for brands to start their transformation now before they're forced to, and find ways to connect those experiences. And that's where tools like artificial intelligence come in tools that automation tools that can help you take all of the data from all of your interactions and unify them into one place so that you can really have a really instant, real-time picture of what your customer is doing. A lot of the times in legacy marketing technologies, you can connect the dots, but it's like 2 weeks after the campaign has ended, the customer is gone. Customer doesn't care anymore. You're the only one that cares at that point.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about the SEO ranking? Because you mentioned the third party cookie. Google eventually, it was supposed to be this year. Now it's like
Yeah,
year.
that's an interesting one. So, and we said we'd get to this, but there's going to be some laws taking effect in the UK that with SEO, basically, we're trying to avoid having biased SEO. So if you're on Google, or let's say you're in Amazon and you search a product, you can't preference your product over other people's products.
Mhm.
And I think that's why it's going to be important, is because we're going to see a lot of space open up as these laws take effect to allow some of the things that used to be happening in a good way to happen again, right? So search rankings that actually are real, not inflated or biased.
And
Yes, exactly. And that's a good thing, right? We're going to see a lot more innovation when we can sort of clear some of the monopolies away.
okay. So let's talk a little bit about, we have, kind of the traditional, I guess there's traditional marketing, there's this move because of the pandemic, the more interactions become digital. And as you said earlier, that opens up the opportunity to be a little bit more precise, to have a better understanding of what works and what doesn't. And you're already starting to see this thing, the metaverse, and this stuff called Web3. And what I'm hearing is the more immediate impacts of some of those kind of technologies is going to be on retail. And of course, when you're talking retail, that means there's opportunity for marketing and advertising and all these things. So how does all this new stuff, how does this kind of shape the future as you see it when it comes to MarTech and AdTech?
Really, I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's retail. I think it's going to be like sector based pretty much. Like you're not going to see a big metaverse shift in B2B, right? You're going to see it. Nike's a great example of taking advantage of the metaverse. You're going to see really innovative brands, retail brands that are coming up with new ways to engage in the metaverse over the next 12 months for sure, but next 3 to 5 years, definitely. So, those brands that have always kind of been in the forefront are going to continue to do that. And I would say to marketers out there, be cautious and make sure that whatever you embark on, you can sort of prove the value. You can tie back that expenditure to revenue, because what may work in one industry won't work in another.
More data gets created, more digital interactions just generally. But as we start doing more and more, with those kind of technologies, it creates more data. That creates more potentially sensitive data. And there's this big, of course, there's this big discussion, conversation around customer data privacy. A lot of times when people say data privacy, they're really, they seem to talk more about security and making sure the data is secure. But I want to talk about the ethical use of customer
Sure.
data, and how all this, the more digital interactions creates more data, the more different devices being used creates more data, the more Web3, metaverse kind of, scenarios creates more data. But how do we get the ethics of how to use this data right? Because it feels to me, I do a weekly show called Watching Privacy with a few fellas, and we're all, we're really focused on this stuff. It feels like the excitement of having all this data overshadows the ethical use of how you should actually use it. How do And this is probably a loaded question, I understand, but how do we make sure that as marketers get excited about all this additional data they have at their disposal, they make sure they don't cross the line and start doing things with it that it was never really meant for them to do, and also it actually starts thinking about them benefiting more than the customer benefiting?
Sure. And my answer is always the same to this question, and that's transparency. So we are in this mess with consumers because we were not transparent about how we've been using their data for the last 10 years. And I think for the most part, most brands, it's not malicious, right? It's basically, hey, we're using your data to help you shop better. And
Right.
instead of just telling them that, now we've created this situation where they're fearful, they don't understand what's, behind the curtain. And that's sort of how we ended up here. And I think if we lean in with a transparency focused, like if the consumer was seeing this right now, would they be alarmed by it?
Right.
And I think if we just stick with that, we're good to go. And unfortunately, there's always those bad apples that spoil the bunch. And that's when regulation comes into play. And that's what's happening in the UK. And some of the great parts of legislation in UK are that it often hits companies that are based elsewhere but do business within the UK. So they're forced to comply with some of these laws, right? And I would say too, one of the core aspects of data privacy is data portability. So where's your data going? You have companies that have multiple apps and they're pushing a data flow through all of the apps to try to capture a 360-degree view of you. And maybe you didn't agree to that, So I think just really being transparent, if you're signing up here, you're also signing up there. If you're giving me this data, this is what I'm going to do with it. I think it's really, really, really as simple as having a true opt-in page. We have sort of, and excuse my French here, we have sort of these BS opt-in pages, the cookie walls, accept all cookies. And we're at the point now where it's so prevalent that we don't even read them. We just click them because we want the content. But really enabling the consumer to make informed decisions about how their data is being used.
Yeah. Yeah. Give them the say.
Yes.
I love what you said, the transparency. And, we're not dumb. We know you're in business. You got to make some money, but at least say, hey, look, we want to use this, to improve your experience. But yeah, it'll also help us out too. It'll help us out, creating better experiences, but it'll also help us stay in business. I mean, that's, if you like the experiences we're creating, it's important for us to be able to, make some money while we do that. I think everybody would understand that.
Absolutely. And you have people who just lay people, basically not in the industry. How would they know? They get scared by some of these, ad techniques where they're like, hey, I just said sofa, and now I'm getting ads from X, Y, and Z department store trying to sell me a sofa. Like, are they listening to me? I think that these sort of run-of-the-mill things that have become regular to marketers can be scary to consumers when you don't explain it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you quickly about TikTok. Everybody's talking about TikTok. It's the hottest. I guess it's the hottest social network. I think there's over 1 billion active monthly users at this point. People love the videos. What should a marketer who has not really addressed what's going on with TikTok, how should they approach it at this point? What should they do? I know it depends on the industry, the kind of customers
Yeah,
you have, but generally speaking, it seems like at least at this point, all roads are leading towards that
sure.
video, short, quick video engagement opportunities. But what are you seeing, and what should marketers be doing with TikTok?
I sort of have been tackling this question for many years because we had, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram kind of all bust out at the same time. And we had brands sort of just creating accounts on these sites and using them and then figuring out, oh, this is not driving any sort of uptick for my business, but I'm just going to keep doing it because you have to. And there's no you have to. But if it's right for your business, TikTok's a great place to sort of ride the wave and a great place for sort of native advertising, right? Like making content that really fits in there. And I think that depending on your industry, if you want to branch out and test and learn, that's my big drum that I'm always pounding is test it out, get on there, spend some money, see what happens. If it works for you, if it drives engagement, if it drives, subscriptions or whatever is relevant to your business, keep going. If it's not working out at all, don't waste your time and your money and your effort. And, often I think too, it comes back to we marketers always have shrinking budgets, right? And we tend to burn our employees out with, okay, social media director. Now you've got to keep up with all these channels, even though 2 of the 8 are the only ones driving engagement for us. So really figure out, hey, is this the right fit for us? And if it is, go all in. If it's not, get out while you can.
That sounds like kind of the strategy behind omnichannel, being able to, and I noticed in the report there's a definite move to that, although it feels like there's been an ongoing move for a while.
Yeah.
It does feel like every year there are more channels, there are more content formats, there are more devices, and so that creates this ongoing need, I guess, from a marketing perspective, to try to create a strategy that is flexible and agile enough that you're able to take advantage of that, even though can be a very complex, complicated situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, we have omni-channel and we have multi-channel. And I think that truthfully, most companies are at multi-channel. And I don't know what the future is going to look like in terms of being able to have an omni-channel approach in this new environment. But again, I would say get to a place where your marketing's always on and the channels are relevant.
And that means another thing that came out, always on means no fewer campaigns, or
Yeah, the campaign is static. It's not it can adapt in real time, right? So like I set the dials and I'm like, okay, send Brent an ad at 12 p.m. about pro golf and then send an email on Friday if he clicks on the ad. That's not going to work because you're in control of your customer journey, right? And it's quick now. It's a click here and a click there. And if you can't pivot with the customer, you're just going to be left behind. It needs to be almost instant that you're able to switch your message, the format, the channel, those kind of things. It needs to be always on at all times so that we can give you the best experience possible.
so who in the future, or now going into the future, what are the right traits? What are the right mindsets of a marketer, an advertiser going forward? What would you be looking for to hire somebody for the landscape that we have just laid out?
Yeah, I'm looking for someone who can really adapt quickly and come up with new ideas that go outside the box of the way that we've been doing things over the past 10 years. And maybe that's, taking a look at new partnerships. Maybe that's figuring out, where the money needs to be spent in terms of the funnel instead of the channel, right? So like, where are we getting, the most engagement, and how can we convert that engagement? I think you can get engagement all day, but if it's not converting to a sale, doesn't matter, right? So I'm really looking for folks who understand that we're moving away from the way that we've always done things. I'm a really big proponent of, we don't just do things because that's the way they've always been done. That's a disaster. We need to be able to pivot and act and not be afraid to make transformations. And I know that can be hard, especially in a budget constrained world. And marketing is the first place where companies cut budgets. So it's really difficult, but that makes it even more critical that we have, critical thinking marketers and folks that can adapt.
So you led me to my last question. I think the inflation numbers just came out today, and they were higher than expected, so it's still through the roof. You're seeing more and more stories about layoffs taking place, the specter of a recession. So, with that kind of as a backdrop, what role will this kind of the marketing, MarTech, AdTech play in a potential down market?
Yeah. So the goal, I think, is to be able to show up in the marketplace, even if you only have a couple of people behind the curtain working the controls. That's the goal of automation. And I think we just haven't kind of gotten to the place where it's working the way that we want it to work. And I think that probably you're going to see marketers having to make some tough choices about what, like I said before, maybe it's not the right time for omni-channel. Maybe it's multi-channel, investing in the right areas, and this is my personal opinion, is some of these layoffs and some of these sort of bad things we're seeing in the marketplace, it's fear driven. A lot of it, it's companies that had made massive growth happen with hiring, and now they're sort of righting themselves. I think that honestly, maybe I'm being optimistic, but I'm thinking that it's not going to be as bad as we're sort of projecting. I think that the layoffs that are happening now, you're seeing people get really spooked, and hopefully just correcting their overhiring sprees.
Tara, this has been a really great conversation. Before I let you go, is there anything in the report, any nuggets that you wanted to make sure people are aware of?
Just that, you're going to be seeing more job seekers, but the skill sets that you're going to want to hire for are different than you have in the past. So make sure that as you go forward with your digital transformations, that you have the right talent, or that you upskill the talent that you already have. It's really important to have the right people in the right roles, especially in a time where we're going to be maybe seeing more layoffs and having less resources.
Awesome. Well, this has been a really great conversation. We covered a lot of ground.
We did.
And where can people go if they want to check out this research? Where can they go to get it?
Yeah, so go to pega.com / future of marketing, and you'll be able to download the report there. We also have a virtual event coming up on July 28th.
Speaking of which,
woo, there we go. We'll be talking with a bunch of great leaders about the trends from the report and what they think is going to happen. And these are all awesome folks that have a lot to say.
I know one of them very well, Liz Miller.
Oh, she's the best.
Definitely awesome. That is going to be not only will that be informative, it's going to be fun knowing that Liz and you are going to be a part of that. So
It's gonna be great. She's a rock star. And you know what? I'll leave you with a Liz Miller nugget here, which is that when did the third party cookie ever help build a relationship?
yeah, I remember her saying that at some event not that long ago. I think it was a
Yep.
tweet she put out or something. I was like, yeah, that sounds like Liz. It's a
Yep.
good one.
There we go.
Maybe that was a super cookie.
Maybe that's the functionality of a super cookie.
Tara, this has been great. I always ask for my last question, every guest I have, one question, regardless of how great the conversation was. And this one was really great. The wrong answer to this question means I will never talk to you again.
Okay. All right.
Not that there's any pressure here. Do you have a favorite NFL team? And I'm glad that you're not working in the Boston office of Pega.
To be honest with you, I'm more of a hockey fan, but obviously the Seahawks. I'm from Seattle, so I have to stay true to my home team.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
And you know what? I'm
So.
glad that Russell Wilson is gone. Bye, Russell.
Wow. From Russell Haight from a Seahawks fan.
See ya.
Oh, this is great. No, the only wrong answer is the Patriots. I'm a Rams fan, and they beat me twice in the Super Bowl.
Oh,
yeah. So
right.
I have a lot of frenemies in Pega.
Totally, total frenemies.
But Tara, thank you so much. This would be great. I would love to have another conversation sometime down the road if you're up for it.
Absolutely, Brent. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. And thank you all for checking us out. I'll see you tomorrow with the CRM players. Have a great rest of the day.